proclamation, the district still welcomes all students. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
The San Bernardino Freeway is a mess in El Monte. 10 westbound at Garvey Avenue solo crash has taken out the 2 left lanes. You're on the brakes from Grand Avenue. Meanwhile, the left lane blocked on the 10 eastbound at Garvey Avenue because a tire flew over from the westbound side and hit a car. Going to the Riverside Freeway in Anaheim, 2-car injury wreck 91 westbound before Kramer to LaSalle. This is in the number 3 lane, middle lane towards your right. You are busy from Imperial Highway.
Calling all night owls, Buffalo Wild Wings is open late. Fill up on some tasty apps with an ice cold tall beer starting at $4. Late night food and drinks start at $4 from 10 till close at B-Dubs. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void where prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. 13 years after the NCAA shut him down and took his Heisman Trophy, former USC star Reggie Bush is hitting back with a lawsuit. Bush is suing the NCAA for defamation of character. Bush has scheduled a press conference Wednesday morning at the Coliseum to discuss his lawsuit. Bush claims the NCAA made false allegations about him in 2021 when the organization announced it was not reinstating his collegiate records or returning his Heisman Trophy. The NCAA reported that Bush had a pay-for-play arrangement when he was at USC from 2002 to 2005. Bush was also accused of receiving improper benefits, including a mortgage-free home for his family. To this day, Bush has not denied that he accepted improper benefits from an alleged USC booster. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
I'm steady trying to find the motive. Why do what I do? And freedom ain't getting no closer. No matter how far I go, my car is stolen. No registration. Cops patrolling. And now they done stop me and I get locked up. They won't let me out. They won't let me out. Locked up. They won't let me out. No.
I'm Tavis, Smiley, and I am delighted to have you along with us today during the final hour of our program. 2 great hours already. This one is going to be fire, because it always is. When noted Judge LaDoris Cordell joins us, and she's with us now for the hour to sound off on a number of trending legal topics, including a lawsuit against a venture capital fund that supports Black women-owned businesses. Listen very carefully to this now. A lawsuit's been filed against this venture capital fund, which we'll get Judge Cordell to break down for us. But once again, it's a capital fund that supports Black women-owned businesses. The lawsuit, watch this, was filed by the same guy behind the successful Supreme Court attack on affirmative action. His name is Edward Blum. And in this hour, you'll hear from Judge Cordell about what he's up to now and what he hopes to accomplish with this lawsuit. And that's not it. He's also the same activist behind other cases suing law firms around the country. And there's a diversity angle to that as well. So he was successful finally on doing away with affirmative action at the college level, given this Supreme Court decision of some weeks ago. Now he's going after this firm that supports black women-owned businesses, and he's suing other law firms around the issue of DE&I. So he's a tsunami unto himself when it comes to attacking anything that has diversity, again, equity, inclusion connected to it. And so I'm glad to have a real expert in this hour, Judge LaDoris Cordell, on with us to talk about all of these cases, a bit about who this Edward Blum character is. And as we move through this hour, I want to get her take on a couple of things I've seen her post lately about what she would do in the Trump case if she were the lawyer. I mean, she was the judge, rather, not the lawyer, the judge. She's a retired judge now, but if she were overseeing this Trump mess, how would she move? What would she be doing? We'll get her take on that as well. Judge LaDoris Cordell, always an honor to have you on this program. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad to be with you.
Glad to have you back. As I said, I've been looking for this hour, as I always do when you come on, because I'm going to learn something. And I got my pen and paper handy to start taking notes on the stuff that I need to be fully aware of. Let me just start our conversation with this, and we'll just lay the groundwork. And when we come forward, we'll start to unpack this. So this case that I mentioned a moment ago, this lawsuit specifically, rather, against this venture capital fund that supports black women-owned businesses. Just give me 2 or 3 minutes about what this is, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So we should start with the basics. And the basics is that the U.S. Supreme Court recently ruled that affirmative action programs cannot be reconciled with the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. And basically, it's outlawed affirmative action when it comes to admissions in colleges and universities. However, there was only one sentence, in response to a question during oral arguments asked by Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. There's one sentence that says, nothing prohibits universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected the applicant's life. So race is still a factor. It's just how it is raised by applicants when they write their essay. Now, that applied only to universities and colleges and admissions. However, this lawsuit that you're talking about and the others that have been filed deal with something completely different. So Mr. Blum filed a lawsuit against the venture capital group Fearless Fund over grants that it awards to black female entrepreneurs. And his argument is that this program amounts to, and I quote, express an intentional racial discrimination in the making of contracts. So what does contracts have to do with any of this? Well, this contract he's arguing about or talking about comes from the Civil Rights Act of 1866. The Civil Rights Act was enacted right after the Civil War, and the purpose of the Civil Rights Act was intended to protect the civil rights of African descent, of people of African descent born in or brought to the United States. And when this act was passed by the Senate, then racist President Andrew Johnson vetoed it. And the Senate overrode the veto. And this was the very first time that the U.S. Congress ever overrode a presidential veto. And all of this was to give more rights to African Americans. And there's one clause in the Civil Rights Act of 1866 that says basically that any citizen has the same right that a white citizen has to make and enforce contracts. So Mr. Blum has taken that and used it in reverse discrimination, saying that what the Fearless Fund is doing and what these law firms are doing and what other businesses are doing is violating this contracts clause in the Civil Rights Act of 1866. He's basically turning it on its head and using it against African Americans and to promote the issues for white people.
All right. Brilliantly done. And that's why she is an amazing, now retired jurist. She knows how to do these things and keep it tight and make it right. So now you understand what we're talking about. That's the foundation has been laid. So you know I'm ready to start my interrogation, which I will commence when we come forward. Judge LaDoris Cordell on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
MC Light for AARP. Hip-hop, the cultural phenomenon that took New York by storm in 1973, is celebrating 50 years of rocking mics and crowds. Whether you're a ride-or-die hip-hop head or simply curious about its origins, check out the latest issue of AARP, the magazine. It celebrates this incredible milestone with a featured story brimming with fun hip-hop facts and history. Head over to aarp.org/black community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/black community.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Are you looking for a tax preparation firm that understands the unique financial challenges of African American business owners? Then look no more. Wealth Management Financial Advisors can prepare and file your individual and business taxes. They're committed to providing their clients with the best possible service. See how they make the greatest impact on your taxes. Find them at wealthmanagementlb.com or call them at 562-427-8877. That's 562-427-8877.
To my hometown, my community. Some of you have known me my whole life. Do you notice anything different about the kids in the neighborhood? Ever paid attention? You might start with gifts, money, attention. These are signs. Child trafficking is happening right here in this town. So don't just watch through the window. Pay attention. Because the more we know, the more we'll all know to say no. Learn the signs to look for and how to help at no-to-say-no.com.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Indeed you are, and you're really listening to Tavis Smiley in dialogue with Judge LaDoris Cordell as we talk about this character named Edward Blum and all that he is doing to upend any advancement that black folk seem to make through struggle in this country. And no better person to sort of unpack this for us than Judge Cordell. So, Judge Cordell, you were breaking out this Civil Rights Act of 1866 and how this is the entry point for the drama, for all the nonsense that Edward Blum is advancing right about now. So, you're the expert here. I'm just a lowly talk show host. Tell me why this particular act, this measure, this clause is his entry point, and whether or not that entry point is legitimate. Will the court see it as a legitimate entry point?
Okay, very good question, Tavis. First of all, the affirmative action decision regarding admissions was based on the 14th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment applies to government action. So the University of North Carolina and Harvard receive federal money, so therefore they come under the purview of government action. When you look at workplaces, private industry, that clause would not apply. So he had to find somewhere else, another way of getting to the workplace for private business. And that's where the Civil Rights Act of 1866 comes in, and its clause regarding contracts. So he's utilizing this. It is creative. this man is an evil genius. This man is a lawyer. He's not a lawyer. He was a financier, a lot of money. And he has basically said over the next 2 or 3 years, he intends to bring more lawsuits to shut down anything that private parties and businesses will do that give any kind of a step up to women, to the disabled, and to people of color. So here's your question, though, was, how receptive is the Supreme Court going to be to this? Well, let's first of all talk about this. We're not talking about the Supreme Court. We're talking about the 6 supermajority. They're the ones, the 6, they're conservatives who have just upended everything. So how willing are they going to be to look at this? And my conclusion is very willing. Why do I say that? In the affirmative action case, Justice Neil Gorsuch, one of the 6, wrote a concurring opinion. A concurring opinion is not the main one, but it's those they're saying, I agree, but I want to add something. In his concurring opinion, he made it crystal clear that in his view, the court's rule that an educational institution may never discriminate based on race now applies with equal force to employers. So I think there is a very high probability that the supermajority 6 will say the exact same thing once a case comes forward, and Mr. Blum is going to do this. He is bringing these cases forward. Fearless Fund, and now he's looked at 2 major international law firms who have diversity efforts. They're trying to bring more people of color into the legal profession. Today, only 5% of all lawyers in the country are African American, and very few, even fewer, are partners in law firms. So these 2 law firms have fellowships. They have programs that are geared to boosting that, to saying to people of color, come join us, and we'll even offer you fellowships to get you in the door. Mr. Blum is set on shutting all of that down.
So if he has his way, then there will be no on-ramp anywhere in this country, in any field of human endeavor, for diversity programs, for financing, for anything essentially. If you happen to be a person of color, he will shut down all of those on-ramps if he's successful. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That is correct, and it's very troubling, and it just means everywhere. And he has made it clear. He's saying, I want to make sure that straight white men and the non-disabled get the attention they should get, and we want to make sure they're eligible for every single thing that this DEI is doing. And he basically wants to shut down DEI. And the hope is, of course, that these businesses don't take the easy way out and say, well, he's headed for it, so let's just get rid of them now. And that's the hope, that they do not do that. Yeah. I just want to add one other thing, that there are also now complaints that have been filed. So another member of Trump's team is Stephen Miller, who is just a man filled with hate. And he is asking the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to investigate the hiring practices aimed at increasing minority representation at a long list of companies, including Kellogg's, Hershey, and Alaska Airlines. He's already tried it at Starbucks, and a federal judge in Washington threw out the lawsuit and saying, this is ridiculous, you're wasting my time. Starbucks can do what it wants in trying to diversify its hires. But as I said, if they work their way up to the Supreme Court, we're looking at big trouble here.
This is not the way, it seems to me, to run a multiracial democracy. That's another conversation. We'll put a pin in that for the moment. This is not the way to advance multiracial democracy. There's no debate about that, it seems to me. And yet, as a legal issue, these arguments seem to have life. And I'm trying to square these two things. and this necessarily, excuse me, this is not necessarily the role of the Supreme Court. I'm just raising this in conversation with you. I'm trying to juxtapose, trying to square these two things. How, on the one hand, we recognize that we live in and we're trying to advance this multiracial democracy, and yet on the legal front, you have all of these cases that are aimed at doing anything and everything they can to shut down the advancement, the progression of a multiracial democracy. Can you, if that question makes sense, can you square those two things with me?
Sure, absolutely. The majority of Americans, I don't care what color, what ethnicity, want to have a multiracial democracy that's fair to all. It is just a handful of people who now see a window of opportunity to move to shut all of that down. So this is very, very few people who are utilizing the supermajority to do what they want. And we have a Supreme Court that is completely out of step. Again, the 6, not the 3 liberals, who are out of step and who are doing what they want to do because that's what they want and because they can. So that is the big danger here. So the issue becomes really looking at, and who's in the lead here in the Supreme Court? Clarence Thomas. This is, they're listening to him, who not only hates himself for being black, he hates everything about anything that has to do with promoting people and opening up doors to make sure people who have been disadvantaged have some sort of an opening and, a leg up. He is now the leader on the 6th. They're looking to him. Shocking, given that he was the replacement for Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah, but as you well know, at this point, though, he is the longest-serving justice on the court, on the bench. So they're looking to him for a lot of reasons. Let me just, for those who are curious about, I don't mean to put you on the spot here. I assume you can give me some detail on this. But for those who are more curious about Ed Blum, like what Negro did something to Ed Blum that he ain't never got over? Like what animates? Who is this guy, and what's animating him? And not that somebody black had to do anything to you. That was a tongue-in-cheek, obviously, comment. He's a white male, so nobody had to do anything to him. It could just be born of arrogance and entitlement. But tell me more about Ed Blum and what animates him to be going after affirmative action, going after diversity, equity, and inclusion, going after these law firms and their diversity programs, going after this program, Fearless Fund, that funds black women-owned businesses. What is Ed Blum's problem?
So Ed Blum is a financier who I think, number one, has nothing better to do with his time and his money. But I believe that he sees that affirmative action as being, in a sense, quotas. And he comes from, I think, a background where quotas were used, for example, very much against people of Jewish heritage. And Jews in this country were extremely discriminated against at Ivy League institutions like Harvard and Yale, weren't even allowed in. And then when they were allowed in, were subjected to quotas. And so there's a history, and it's really the divide that has really divided black folks and Jews who were together in the civil rights movement, worked together, and it was the divide. So you have African Americans saying, no, we support affirmative action. It doesn't have to, and not quotas. But you have certain people on the other side saying, no, if it could lead to quotas, and it's just really not going to be beneficial. He may be one of those individuals. And he's very smart, because what does he do for cover? He gets Asian Americans to form this alliance to sue, to shut down affirmative action at Harvard and at UNC and then at all these. He's using them as a front, and it's sad that they're allowing themselves to be used. Blum has made it clear. He has just basically said that if you have anything that blocks straight white men from having access to fellowships and all these kinds of programs like the Freedom Fund, then I want to shut it down. I want to make sure either you open it up to everybody or we shut it down. And it's very sad, because he's ignoring the fact that this country was founded and built based on racism. And these laws that were passed, these major amendments to the Constitution, the big three, were all passed to give to African Americans rights that we never had. So they are race-based to begin with, and he is trying to erase it, and the 6 on the Supreme Court are buying into it.
You said something a moment ago that I want to follow up on. I want to be very careful, and you are a jurist, retired now, but you have been careful in these spaces, so I don't need to give you advice on how we're going to walk gingerly through this terrain that we're about to tap through. But we're going to deal with this. And we're going to deal with it because you raised it, and it's been on my mind anyway. So let's just go for it. Edward Blum, who we're talking about right now, who's behind all of these cases against law firms, against black women, was successful in getting the Supreme Court to do away with affirmative action. He is a white male, but he is a Jewish white male. Why do I raise that? Because, again, Judge Cordell said a moment ago brilliantly that in our fight for civil rights, for the most part, the Jewish community has always been in line with us. One of Dr. King's dearest friends who marched with him in many marches, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Just an amazing guy. Harry Belafonte raised all kind of money inside the Jewish community for Dr. King and those who were doing the work in the movement. I think most of you sort of know that history. So here you have one particular Jewish American who has made it his business to do anything and everything he can to destroy any path forward for black people. To my mind, I have not seen the Jewish community come out writ large and chin check him. Why do I raise that? Because anytime Minister Louis Farrakhan says something that they find cringeworthy or anti-Semitic, then the Jewish community asks every black leader and radio host they know to denounce Minister Farrakhan publicly. They don't allow these things to get said without asking black leaders to denounce Minister Farrakhan. It ain't Minister Farrakhan alone. We just talked about Jamie Foxx the other day. It's Jamie Foxx. It's, what's my boy, the comedian? The other one, young guy, MTV, Nick Cannon. It's Nick Cannon. I mean, there's a long, it's Kyrie Irving, it's Kanye West. The minute they say anything, they want us to denounce these African Americans. But here's one Jewish guy who is wreaking havoc all over this country. So let me be very clear. Some of my best friends are Jews. That ain't my point. I'm not denouncing, demeaning the Jewish community. I'm asking whether or not Judge Cordell, you've seen anything, because I have not, whether the Jewish community is chin-checking him for going after African Americans in this way.
Well, first let me say that my partner is Jewish. Mm-hmm. So I have a great deal of respect for the trauma, the history that Jews have gone through. So to answer your question, let me just give you an analysis here. When Ward Connerly, a black man, tried to shut down affirmative action and did in California, I didn't hear a whole lot of, black folks in the black community rising up and putting him down. Mm-hmm. But let's get back to your question, because it's a very important one.
Sure.
The ACLU, which is, I look at it as a predominantly Jewish organization, and its history is to fight for civil rights. They have been very outspoken against what Mr. Blum is doing. And I don't see the Jewish community, just like I don't see the black community, as monolithic.
Sure.
There are Jews who are speaking out, and there need to be, in my view, we need to have, there could be more people speaking out, and there should be. But there are folks who come back who are of a Jewish heritage, who are Jewish, who are fighting back against Mr. Blum, and they're doing it in the courtroom. So I don't know, how aware Jews are, in fact, of Mr. Blum. I don't know, because, this man, when I talk about about him on the radio, I think there are a lot of folks who are like, what? Who? This guy? He's stealth. He's stealth. And that's why I appreciate you having a platform to put this man's name out there, because even the general media, you see his name mentioned occasionally, but why isn't he front and center when they are talking about people who are trying to do these things to dismantle affirmative action?
I want to believe, we'll discuss this more when we come forward, I want to believe that my Jewish friends, my very powerful Jewish friends who are aware that Ed Blum is a Texas Jew, and behind all of this, I want to believe that if they knew this, or when they come to know this, that they will start to call him out in the same way that Judge Cordell is, in the same way that I am, in the same way that many others are, increasingly for being the one he's a one-man wrecking crew, as I said earlier. He's like a legal tsunami, and determined to do anything and everything he can to cut off any path of progress for African-American people. But again, just think just recently about all the brouhaha. That Jamie Foxx story is everywhere. The Nick Cannon story was everywhere. We know Kanye West story was everywhere. But nobody's talking about Ed Blum in this particular case, and he's destroying the lives of black folk all across this country, cutting off these paths of progress. I digress for now. More when we come forward with Judge LaDoris Cordell. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Parents, we know we can't protect our kids from everything. Eventually, they're going to bump their heads or scrape their knees. But we can protect them from 6 types of cancer. HPV, or human papillomavirus, is a common preventable virus that can cause cancer later in life. The HPV vaccine prevents human papillomavirus and all the cancers it can cause. The American Cancer Society recommends getting your sons and daughters the HPV vaccine starting at age 9 to protect them later in life.
It's Wednesday, August 23rd. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former University of Southern California star running back, African-American Reggie Bush is planning to file a defamation lawsuit against the NCAA. The lawsuit is based on what he asserts was the NCAA maliciously attacking his character through a completely false and highly offensive statement that was widely reported in the media and substantially and irreparably damaged his reputation. Netflix is reporting strong sign-up numbers despite its recent crackdown on password sharing. The San Francisco Bay Area streaming giant reported a nearly 26% drop in subscribers in July over June, but June set a record for sign-ups, leading to a net gain in July and numbers that were higher year over year. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Had an earlier wreck on the 101 right at the 405 connector. That is cleared, but traffic is still slow approaching. 405 South is jammed up from Burbank Boulevard down to Mulholland Skirball. You've got delays on the 405 North out of Inglewood. Right around Century Boulevard, you'll hit the brakes there and stay slow up to National. 10 West, very heavy from Arlington out to Robertson.
Calling all night owls, Buffalo Wild Wings is open late. Fill up on some tasty apps with an ice cold tall beer starting at $4. Late night food and drinks start at $4 from 10 till close at B-Dubs. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void where prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
At your Amazon Fresh store, you can rely on roasted chicken for $4.97, 2-pound bunches of bananas for 99 cents, French bread for 89 cents, and more. Visit your local Amazon Fresh store for low prices from A to Z and head to Amazon.com/savewithfresh to see this week's deals.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. 13 years after the NCAA shut him down and took his Heisman Trophy, former USC star Reggie Bush is hitting back with a lawsuit. Bush is suing the NCAA for defamation of character. Bush has scheduled a press conference Wednesday morning at the Coliseum to discuss his lawsuit. Bush claims the NCAA made false allegations about him in 2021 when the organization announced it was not reinstating his collegiate records or returning his Heisman Trophy. The NCAA reported that Bush had a pay-for-play arrangement when he was at USC from 2002 to 2005. Bush was also accused of receiving improper benefits, including a mortgage-free home for his family. To this day, Bush has not denied that he accepted improper benefits from an alleged USC booster. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you looking to steer your career in a new direction? Driving for the Culver City Bus can be your ticket to a long-lasting career with excellent benefits and paid training. Culver City Bus is looking for customer service and safety-minded bus operators to join the growing team. Culver City Bus offers on-the-job paid training, uniform allowance, and health benefits. Culver City Bus are now even putting their money in your pocket with a one-time $2,500 sign-on bonus. Let us connect you with an essential service job. If you enjoy driving, seek real opportunities for career advancement, and passionate about making a difference in your community, then we invite you to join the team. Start your journey by submitting an application at culvercity.org/job. For more information, visit culvercitybus.com or call call the live customer service operator at 310-253-6500. Again, 350-253-6500.
Support comes from Getty, presenting The Gospel at Colonus, a theatrical event under the stars that reimagines the story of Oedipus. Blending Greek myth with Black spiritual practice, the show follows the blinded Oedipus as he seeks redemption after a lifetime of tragedy. Co-produced by Court Theater, conceived and adapted by Lee Brewer, with music composed by Bob Telson. Thursdays through Saturdays this September at the Getty Villa Museum. Tickets available now at getty.edu.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
There's a bit of breaking news here that I want to just tee up just a bit here. Don't have too much time to really get into the details of this, but a plane has gone down. I'm trying to pull the story up. I had it here, and it just skipped on me right quick. So just give me 30 seconds here to find this story. You recall the mercenary that was in Russia. I guess a couple months ago now. The mercenary in Russia who was attempting to try to start a military coup, as it were, in Russia to potentially overthrow Mr. Putin. A plane has gone down, and he is the Wagner mercenary leader was on board this plane. He's the leader of the Wagner group, essentially. This plane went down in Russia. He is listed on the passenger list. We are told that all 10 persons on the plane are dead. And again, Mr. Prigozhin, who's the leader, the founder of the Wagner mercenary group, who staged this brief mutiny against Russia's military leadership back in June, again, is listed as a passenger on that plane. And I'm going to leave it right there because that's all I know right now. They have not confirmed whether his body has as yet been found, but he was listed as a passenger on this plane. I raise that for all the obvious reasons. We were discussing earlier on today's program, in our second hour, I believe, the war between Russia and Ukraine. Had a spirited conversation about that. And if you missed that, check out the podcast of that conversation. We were talking about Russia earlier in today's program, and the name Vladimir Putin, of course, came up, obviously, in that conversation. But here's a guy who attempted a brief coup, if you will, inside of Russia, and now a plane has gone down, and we are told that he was on the passenger roster. I do not mean to laugh, and I am not laughing. I'm not saying a whole lot about it, except for you see the same thing I see, that all of a sudden this plane goes down, and he's on the passenger list after attempting a coup against one Vladimir Putin. I'm going to leave that right where it is. As my big mama would say, we're going to leave that lay where the good Lord done flung it. You can do the math yourself, the politics yourself. There'll be all kinds of news about this, I'm sure, the rest of the day and the next few days. But what happened to this plane? How did it go down? Was he on the plane? But he's pretty much been out of sight since this attempted coup. But now, if these reports are accurate, he was a passenger on this plane, and they've confirmed that all 10 persons are dead. Again, his body has not been, there's no report, at least, that his body has been found. But that plane has gone down, and apparently he was on it, or certainly listed as a passenger on the plane. So there you have it. You'll be hearing a lot more about that on this station and all kinds of news outlets. There'll be all kinds of commentary. Conspiracy theorists and others will have their say, but for now, you know at least the details, at least as much as I know, at this hour. More to come. That said, in case you've just tuned in, we're in a very rich conversation, as always, with Judge LaDoris Cordell, and now a retired jurist, about this guy named Ed Blum and all the damage that he is doing when it comes to DE&I. Once again, in case you've just tuned in, he's filed a lawsuit against Fearless Fund, an Atlanta-based venture capital fund that supports black women-owned small businesses. He wants to stop black women or anybody else getting money because they happen to be of African descent. He's also suing law firms and trying to stop them from offering fellowships for diverse candidates to get more African Americans in the pipeline to become lawyers. You heard Judge Cordell say only 5% of lawyers in this country happen to be black, so he's trying to shut that down. No more black lawyers. He's shutting that down. He's the same guy behind the affirmative action case that we saw recently. The Supreme Court ruled on ending affirmative action as we know it in colleges and universities. And so this guy, as I said earlier, is a one-man wrecking crew. His name is Ed Blum, and we've been talking about him in this hour. Judge Cordell, before I move on to some other things, I'm fascinated to get to your take on what you would do if you were presiding in this Trump case. I saw a couple of your posts, and I want to interrogate you on that in a few moments here. But Ed Blum has already been successful. I'm putting successful in air quotes for those who believe the way he believes and sees the world the way he sees it, already successful at getting affirmative action wiped out. And now we see all the other efforts that he's engaged in. What's the end game here? How successful can he be advancing these arguments legally, even as we say publicly that we're trying to, to build a multiracial democracy? How successful can he be beyond the case we already know about on affirmative action?
If we did not have the current makeup of the Supreme Court, he wouldn't be successful at all from the very beginning. It is only because the six are there that he has been able to do this. And one big case that he funded was against the Voting Rights Act. And because of his sponsored litigation, the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. So don't just stop with affirmative action. This man has undone the Voting Rights Act of 1964. So of 65. So as long as we have the Supreme Court there, he knows that if he can get the litigation there, that he's going to get decisions on his behalf. Now, I don't understand why people aren't picketing outside his home, why people aren't finding out if he's a financier, where he's investing his money, and then people calling for boycotts of companies that take his money. Why isn't any of this happening? So my hope is that if he wants to do all this stuff, he doesn't get to do it behind the curtain, that he is fully exposed, and that people who care about these issues, who care about them and want things to want a democracy that is fair to all, then they need to be focusing on this man and not let him quietly go about doing this business.
Yep. What do you make of the fact, and clearly he's doing this with the support of the six that you already referenced a few times in this conversation, so he's not doing it alone, so to speak, but he is the driving force behind it. In this democracy, what do you make of the fact that one person, whether it's Ed Blum doing what he's doing, or even a United States senator holding up important legislation in the U.S. Senate, what do you make of the fact that in this democracy, one person could wield this much clout, this much power to impact the lives of millions of other fellow citizens?
I find it appalling. I find it clearly not within the thinking of those who think created the democracy. That being said, we have to be creative. We, the people, think outside the box as how do we address this? How do we make changes within the legislature, within our judiciary, within the whole legal system to say this is not how democracy is supposed to work? And I don't know. I wish I had solutions for you, Tavis, right now. It's something I'm going to think about, and if I have ideas, I'll write about them or talk to you about them on your show.
So how does, and I'm grateful for that, how does the, broadly speaking, I'm not asking for a detailed legal brief, but broadly speaking, how does the Fearless Fund, on behalf of these sisters who they're supporting with their small businesses, how do they respond? How do these law firms who have these diverse, fellowships for diverse candidates, how do they respond, broadly speaking?
I think first they have to say this is not what they're doing. It's not, quote unquote, affirmative action. That this is clearly ensuring that there is a diversified workforce. And so that's one. Second is I think they really need to look at this attack using the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Nobody says that because he's utilizing it as a basis for this litigation that that's legally sound. So I think there's going to be direct attack on that. And just generally speaking, it's just going to be, look, workplaces should be encouraged to diversify, and that's what they're doing. It's not reverse discrimination. We're not excluding anybody. We're including, which is why we have to do this.
When we come forward, I want to get your take on how you would deal with Trump if you were the trial judge in one of these criminal cases, number one. Number two, I do have one final question about this Ed Blum situation. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on television or radio for that matter. I've got great lawyers who host shows on my home station here in L.A., KBLA Talk 1580, and other great lawyers on shows all across the country who I listen to. So I'm not a lawyer, but I know this terminology of strict constructionist, and that's what many of these conservatives are on the U.S. Supreme Court. With regard to this law of 1866, how will they read that clause? I want an answer to that, and then we'll discuss a few other things about Donald Trump when we come forward with Judge LaDoris Cordell. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What does access mean?
Access means owning a home. Access means growing my business.
Access means building generational wealth. No matter your goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Programs and initiatives provide the tools and resources to help you reach them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hey, life doesn't stop when cancer starts. After diagnosis, treatment is vital. But for some, just getting there, to appointments, chemo, or radiation, is a major challenge. You can change that. Volunteer to give rides with the American Cancer Society Road to Recovery program. Driving for a few hours of your day can make a life-saving difference for someone with cancer. Visit cancer.org/drive to learn more.
When it comes to special needs educational and health resources, Special Needs Network has you covered. On Saturday, August 26th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Jane Addams Park in Lawndale, Special Needs Network and California Assemblywoman Tina McKinnon invite you and your entire family for a fun-filled day at a back-to-school and health fair. Featuring music, live performances, exhibitions from your favorite professional LA sports teams, a petting zoo, pony rides, a kids zone, and professional haircuts for kids and teens. Get critical early identification and intervention resources, health and dental screenings, bags of fresh fruits and vegetables, and an opportunity to win fantastic prizes. Free backpacks and school supplies while they last for students, and a chance to win a free cell phone or tablet from TrueConnect with an EBT card. Visit SNNLA.org or on Facebook or Instagram at Special Needs Network.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Scott Strauss. On 9/11, I was a New York City police officer assigned to finding survivors buried under the rubble of the World Trade Center. Those were difficult days, but what kept me going was seeing the way Americans joined together in unity. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat or a Republican or anything else. For 9/11 this year, now a National Day of Service, let's rekindle that spirit of unity by doing good deeds. Visit 911day.org to learn more.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
Judge Cordell, one quick question about one final quick question about this Ed Blum mess. So you detailed for us brilliantly and beautifully, as you always do, and I love you for this. This Civil Rights Act of 1866, the clause specifically that Ed Blum is using to animate all these lawsuits that he is bringing against anybody and everybody doing anything on behalf of black people. To that notion of their strict constructionist read of the Constitution and these writings, what's your sense of how those six will read the clause that he is using?
It's such a good question, and I think the word really is more originalism. They have said basically we're going to look to the original intent of those who pass this legislation. Well, the original intent, it's quite clear, and even by the language, and I'm going to give you just a quote. Part of this act says they want to give I'm quoting now, full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of person and property as is enjoyed by white citizens. Okay? They also it adds, people who are denied these rights on account of race or previous enslavement are guilty of a misdemeanor and they have a fine, they could be in prison for up to a year. So the original intent was to protect those of African descent who were brought here and African descent who were born here, to give them equal protections under the law. So if they look at originalism, they would throw out Mr. Blum's suit, saying that's not what the founders looked at all. They were not interested in elevating the rights of white citizens. It was to bring up the rights, to secure the rights of black folks who had been enslaved. So under originalism, but watch what happens.
Oh, yeah.
They won't even turn to originalism. They're going to turn to something else entirely.
No, I was going to say, that's the irony of this story, that their whole mantra is original intent. That's what they argue all the time, original intent. Mm-hmm. And now, in this instance, if they read it, as you just laid out, if they read it under the guise of original intent, then the outcome can only be to throw these cases out. So just brace yourself for the way they're going to twist this thing in the months to come to accommodate these lawsuits that Mr. Blum is filing. I digress on that point. When we come forward in our remaining moments with Judge LaDoris Cordell, we will close with this. How, Judge Cordell, would you rule? How would you be handling Donald Trump if you were the trial judge on one of these criminal cases? Pick one. There are a number to choose from, 4 and counting in terms of indictments, but I'm curious as to how she would be doing things from the bench if she were in charge of one of these cases. We'll get her response to that in our remaining moments when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
MC Light for AARP. Hip-hop, the cultural phenomenon that took New York by storm in 1973, is celebrating 50 years of rocking mics and crowds. Whether you're a ride-or-die hip-hop head or simply curious about its origins, check out the latest issue of AARP the magazine. It celebrates this incredible milestone with a featured story brimming with fun hip-hop facts and history. Head over to aarp.org/black community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black Radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/black community.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family was founded to help address domestic violence and sexual assault in the Asian and the Pacific Islander communities. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family's mission is to build healthy and safe communities by addressing the root causes and consequences of family violence and violence against women. They are committed to meeting the specific cultural and language needs of the Asian and Pacific Islander women and their families. CPAF's vision is of an Asian and Pacific Islander community that embraces healthy relationships and works in partnership with other communities to eradicate all forms of violence. To access services, volunteer, or for more info, visit nurturingchange.org. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe everyone deserves to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Dominique DePrima here. Having a good credit score is one critical step to obtain a loan to buy a home. But did you know that your credit score is just one factor in getting a mortgage loan? Think about this. Lenders also consider your income, your employment history, current monthly debts, the size of the loan, and the amount of your down payment. Whatever your financial goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Initiatives support you in reaching them. Access your personal financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Her book is one of the best books I've read over the last few years. I always highly recommend it to friends and others, your friends, if you're listening right now. The book is called Her Honor, My Life on the Bench, What Works, What's Broken, and How to Change It. Again, Her Honor is the name of the book. My Life on the Bench, What Works, What's Broken, and How to Change It, written by our guest in this hour, Judge LaDoris Cordell. Highly recommend that book, Her Honor. It's a great read. As you can tell already, in case this is your first time hearing her, nobody quite breaks it down the way she does, and I'm always honored and delighted to have her on this program. Once again, I highly recommend that book, Her Honor. You will not be disappointed. I've got 3 minutes left, Judge Cordell. I give them all 3 to you. And here's my question, my exit question. If you were the trial judge in any of the 4 criminal cases against Donald Trump, how would you sanction him for his deliberate statements, intimidating witnesses, potential jurors, and obstructing a fair trial? Take it away.
A trial judge, Tavis, has to maintain control of her courtroom, and that means her orders have to be respected. That means respected by litigants and also by the lawyers. So it's important when someone violates a court order that there be immediate consequences. It's absolutely clear to me that Trump has violated court orders by interfering with the administration of justice, by intimidating witnesses and jurors. If you come after me, I'll come after you, and other things that he said. So what should be the repercussions? People have said, no, you can't put him in jail because the Secret Service, blah, blah, blah. And my response is, need to be immediate consequences. I'd give him an opportunity to be heard. And if I determined that he indeed had violated my order, then I would order him to jail. But it would be home jail, meaning pick a home, one of his houses. He will be confined there. It would be swept for all electronic devices. I'd make an order prohibiting him from traveling outside of the home. I would have an electronic monitor put on his ankle. He could meet with his lawyers in person. They could use their electronic devices, but they would be prohibited from allowing him to use them at all. I would then, if he tried to violate the order, if he wanted to leave his house and actually walked out, then he would go to jail instead of home jail. And finally, I want to add, I think this man is suffering from a communication disorder called logorrhea, Logorrhea. And that is someone who has a constant need to talk frequently, incoherently. I believe that is his issue, and that's yet another reason why he should be prohibited from going to rallies, from going on social media. So that's what I would do. And then if he didn't want to be in home jail, I'd put him in jail.
What that means, as you well know, you've already teed it up. That would mean that he couldn't campaign. Tonight, he's not appearing tonight on stage at the Republican debate. We already know that. But if you confined him to home jail, he couldn't crisscross the country and campaign for the nomination.
Well, that's his problem because he created the behavior. It's completely in his control. So that's what I would do with him. And I'd also issue a gag order on all lawyers for both sides. You want to talk about this case, you can talk about it all you want, but you will do it in the courtroom, not outside of the courtroom.
Should these Donald Trump cases be televised?
I absolutely believe, I believe the Georgia case will be, and federal courts don't allow televised proceedings, and they need to change that rule, number one, and before they change it, then they need to make an exception. Yes. The public needs to see how the system works. There's a black woman judge presiding in one of the criminal federal cases. She was a former public defender. She knows how to take care of business, and he'll be meeting her next Friday to deal with the violation of her order. So it'll be very interesting to see what she does. But yes, I absolutely support televising this.
Yeah, that's my worst nightmare, encountering a black woman in a bench on a bench in a black robe. We'll see. We will see how he behaves or misbehaves. To your point, next Friday when he encounters that. That ain't something he's ever had to deal with. So we'll see how he navigates that situation. Her book, once again, is called Her Honor: My Life on the Bench, What Works, What's Broken, How to Change It. She is Judge LaDoris Cordell. Judge Cordell, good to have you back on. We will do it again. I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Tavis.
All the best to you. There's our program, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until then, thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The number of people confirmed dead in Lahaina remains at 115, but the number of people considered missing is back to about 1,100. That's according to the FBI's official list, which fell to about 850 people earlier this week. Maui County will soon release the names of missing people in hopes of finding them alive. Some are listed with first names only. African-American James Harden will have to pay up for his comments about 76ers